Storm Agnes has now cleared away. It's a fine start, but then it turns wet and windy from the west later. I'll have all the details of that and more coming up on Good Morning Britain. So strong winds, we talked about it. Trees came down, roads were blocked, ferries were cancelled. Season, it's now cleared away. Here's the details. So the reason the storm was named is because it was causing widespread disruption, as it did across large parts of northern England, Scotland, Northern Ireland and Wales. This was the whole band of rain sequence that came through yesterday overnight, and it's now clearing away from the north. In its wake, these strong winds followed on behind, and the peak gusts of wind that we saw were up to 84 miles an hour at Capel, but widely 60, 70 mile an hour gusts of wind. And it was all powered by a strong jet stream driving across the Atlantic. So they're the high-level winds that act like a conveyor belt, bringing weather fronts across our shores, 150, 160 mile an hour winds up there. And they continue to bring in successions of weather fronts as we head through the next few days. This morning, it is still a windy start to the day. We saw there with Juliet in Scotland, but the winds will ease this morning, and it's actually a dry start for many, but then it turns wet again from the west later. So this is the latest radar. It's a largely fine and dry start today, albeit a breezy one. Plenty of sunshine for this morning, but later on this afternoon, the winds increase from the west yet again, with more rain overnight tonight. Morning to you. Storm Agnes swept across the UK yesterday and overnight last night. It is now clearing away from the north of Scotland, but if we look at our latest pressure sequence, we see our next area of low pressure bringing more rain overnight tonight, but nowhere near as wet or as windy as the conditions we had yesterday. And then signs that high pressure brings something a little more settled for a time this weekend. More on that in just a moment. For today, it is a bright breezy start, and then it turns wet from the west later. So this is the latest satellite and radar. That's the last of the rain clearing away from the northern Isles, but for many of us, it is a dry start to the day, albeit a fairly cloudy one. The winds from the southwest still fairly gusty, particularly across northern areas, but no warnings in force at the moment. So a bright breezy start to the day, some decent spells of sunshine, a few showers through western areas later, and temperature-wise, 17 to 20 degrees, pretty much where we should be for the time of year. But later on this afternoon into this evening, a band of cloud and rain gathers from the southwest, and this whole band of rain moves its way northwards overnight tonight, so a wet night to come. How do things pan out as we head through the next 7 days into the weekend? Well, let's take a look. So for Scotland, Northern Ireland, and for northern areas of England, it's pretty much anywhere north of Leeds. That's the dividing line. We look at our temperatures. So here's where we are for average for the time of year in the north, around about 16. And our temperatures sit around about average as we head through the next 7 days, maybe a little below. Percentage chance of rainfall across the north of the UK. So how likely are we to see wet weather across the north? Actually, it doesn't look too bad. It's largely dry because any rain that comes in is further south. Today, that rain's now cleared away, largely fine into the weekend, but wet weather returns into next week. Fortunes further south for England and Wales as we head through the next 7 days. Well, again, if we look at our temperatures compared to average, it was fairly mild, actually, at the start of the week. Now temperatures around about average as we head through the rest of the week into the weekend. Maybe a little cooler as we head into next week. And then here's our percentage chance of rainfall. So actually, it is largely dry today. Later on, we see that wet weather moving in. Actually, some decent spells of sunshine to end the week and into the weekend. There's a chance later on Sunday, we see an increased risk of showers. Some showers coming through on Monday, but then there's that high pressure building into next week. So the outlook into next week is largely fine and dry with some decent spells of sunshine.